Here's my opening statement. Space Marines, aka the poster boys for Warhammer 40,000 universe, are overrated and they suck. And yet they are the backbone of Warhammer's popularity, and the world of 40k simply cannot exist without them. Or can it? Now, before you start commenting that I am a and an idiot who doesn't understand the very concept of Warhammer, let me present my arguments.
Greetings! I am not a witcher, not a witch, not a psyker, not a mutant, nor any other filthy degenerate whose existence is an offense to the Empire and whose only possible purpose is to die for the Emperor. And before you ask, I am a fan of Warhammer. More of Warhammer Fantasy than 40k, if it's not that obvious. And later I will explain why is that. But first, I'll explain why I hate Space Marines, because I have 5 distinct reasons for that.
Adeptus Astartes are the epitome of masculine ideal of a perfect warrior. Paragons, exemplars, his angels. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these manly men make Warhammer bad in some way, Emperor forbid, no. But the image of Space Marines is so prevalent in 40k aesthetics and basically all the marketing that all the other cool stuff that exists in this universe is pushed aside and can fly below the radar if you're not perceptive enough. Like the lore of different factions and races, which is much more developed and rich than in most of the fantasy books I've read. And don't you say that if I don't like Space Marines that I am not the intended demographic. I know what I'm not. This is one of the reasons I like Dark Tide. There are no Space Marines in Dark Tide. Instead, the world is shown through the eyes of the lowest of the low, rejects, mutants, scum. And they have to rise to the occasion and work together not just to survive, but to achieve something in this extremely grim and unimaginably hopeless place. And they deserve our admiration and praise, while any Space Marine kinda expects it for simply existing. Hell, even Astra Militarum is more deserving of respect, because these very much mortal guys are just people and they still sacrifice themselves for the greater good, or sometimes for the orders of their commissar. Or let's say Adeptus Mechanicus. Such bizarre and cool characters with their unique take on religion and philosophy, but they often get treated as service staff when Adeptus Astartes are present. While Warhammer 40k is becoming more and more mainstream, its poster boys are already easily recognized by many people outside of the hobby. But how many know about Necrons, Tau, or even about Eldari? Space Marines are also becoming mainstream, and it's probably some early hipster bullshit in me, but I hate mainstream. But also, I want Warhammer to be successful and have more games, more stuff. But among that stuff, I want to find some niche nerdy stuff to obsess about. I'm a creature of many contradictions. Do you know how many different chapters of Space Marines there are? If you said something like 20, you're wrong, because it's the number of the original legions of Space Marines, which later were restructured, and currently there are chapters of Adeptus Astartes, each with its different colors, principles and origin story. And yet they all wear power armor, like all the time. They are all big dudes with square jaws and big feet. They're all soldiers. But we didn't answer my question. How many chapters there are? 20? 50? 100? Well, lore-wise, there are currently around 1000 different chapters of Astartes active in the universe. So basically, you can paint your Space Marines in any colors of the rainbow, except for all of them at once, because these dudes are not like that. Or are they? The miniature of a Space Marine is omnipotential, and it is its purpose to be a canvas for your creativity, for the expression of your individuality. But what individuality are we talking about if all those different chapters wear basically the same armor, have the same role on the battlefield, and are created in the same way? And by the way, speaking of how they are created, here we come to my next issue with the idea of Space Marines. The immortal sons of the Emperor are not born like that, but made. The process is brutal, disgusting, and highly lethal, like everything in Warhammer. But those who come out of it become immune to all diseases, fear, and compassion. They become the instruments of war they are meant to be. However, what they can never become is fathers, husbands, and lovers. There is no clear explanation why, but Space Marines are just not interested in women. In men too, I'm not insinuating anything. They are so much removed from regular humans physically and mentally that even if they are capable of physical intimacy, which we don't have any evidence of, they are simply not interested in human connection as we understand it. The only emotions they are known to value are the respect of their battle brothers and approval of their superiors. Oh, and hate to anything that is not human. A bit ironic, don't you think? In that regard, I prefer Astra Militarum guys. At least they are getting some action occasionally. Of course, I should mention Chaos Marines, which can be so much corrupted by Slanesh that in comparison to them, Drukhari would look like nuns. These guys do participate in pleasures of flesh, often someone else's flesh. But again, most Space Marines, while being a hyper-masculine juggernauts of manliness, are basically asexual. Is it because they are an ideal for prepubescent boys who still think that girls are stupid? In any case, I simply cannot relate with someone who doesn't appreciate the beauty of human body and doesn't wish to eventually settle down in a cozy family home on some nice green world. It is, of course, my point of view, as is every opinion in this video. These elite enhanced super soldiers have only one purpose: to spread the God Emperor's light through the muzzles of their bolters and flamethrowers. They exist for war, just like their chainswords exist for rending flesh and metal alike. But war can be many things, and if we look close enough, we can see that Space Marines' approach to battle is quite simple. You move forward towards your enemy while shooting with your ranged weapon, and when you get close enough, you use your melee weapon if your enemy still moves or exists. That's it. That's the whole strategy. No smarts needed, no brain wrinkles trained. I am simplifying, of course, but you cannot deny that the whole image of Adeptus Astartes is based on raw physical power and not, let's say, clever tactics. You can probably tell already that I've always been a nerd. I wasn't bullied at school or stuffed in the locker, but I was really bad at sports, and so I was never included in the classic boys groups. But instead of secretly fantasizing about being a superpowered bastion of masculinity that I could never become, I leaned toward other ideals: fireball-throwing mages, sneaky thieves, wise, benevolent rulers that sit high above the battlefield while commanding their numerous legions. You know, something more realistic. Basically, I accepted my physical limitations, like the roll of a dice when creating a character in D&D, and since then I never associate myself with athleticism and sport, and raw physical power. You probably know that Warhammer Fantasy Battles was the first of the two, and came out whole 4 years earlier than 40k. And in some ways 40k is kinda secondary to the fantasy universe. Just think about the Chaos Gods, or the Space Elves. And yet somehow, in terms of popularity, Warhammer Fantasy is not even in the same league as 40k. I don't know, is it because of the difference between Europe and America, considering that the old world is kinda more European history based and 40k is more... Well, no, probably not that. Maybe it's because 40k has big guns, and there are more fans of big guns out there than there are fans of swords and stuff. Probably it's because Games Workshop spent decades prioritizing 40k before fantasy. In any case, the whole image of 40k is overshadowing my favorite setting, and this image is... While Warhammer 40,000 setting might look like sci-fi to the eyes of a newcomer, with space marines who fly spaceships to fight space aliens, it actually would be a completely wrong assumption. It has a lot of techno elements, but in its core, it is fantasy. Dark and grim, but fantasy nonetheless. All the social structures of any race, all religion and mythology, all narrative tropes, it all based on human history and myth, not on science and futurism. All these stories are about conflicts between different cultures and nations. The very phrase from which starts anything 40k related is
"In the grim darkness of the far future,
there is only war."
Wouldn't you agree that it sounds more epic-y than scientific-y? But that's current me talking. Being a fan of different fantasy settings and knowing almost nothing about 40k past me for a long time avoided 40k's pseudo-sci-fi appearance and thought that it was just another take on Starship Troopers or something. But recently I came to understand that Warhammer 40,000 is techno-fantasy, emphasis on fantasy, with decades of lore and video games in any genre. I still have no idea about the original tabletop Warhammer, except that it's a game for rich people. In a few words, 40k to Warhammer Fantasy is kinda like the younger and more popular brother who enlisted in the army and now is the talk of the family, while the older brother is still living in their parents' basement and refuses to take his medication. So yes, I am kinda annoyed that more of this means less of this, while I kinda want the opposite. I want RPGs set in the old world, with combat like in Vermintide 2 and the quantity of content like in Total War Warhammer. I want animated TV shows about Skaven and dwarfs. But realistically, I will get Total War Warhammer 40,000 and maybe a TV show about Space Marines. By the way, don't get me started on the dwarfs. Have you seen what they were reduced to in 40k? Mutants! Aberrant mutated humans! I have no words!
Well, that was 5 reasons why I hate Space Marines. Feel free to disagree in the comments. Thank you for watching this. Consider subscribing if you like videos like this. I'm still not a Witcher, and as always, take care and farewell.